Good day, everyone. My name is Jetro Ventura, MIT, and today we're going to talk about Java language issues, Tools Eclipse IDE, version control, and SVN. Eclipse IDE. What is Eclipse? Eclipse is an integrated development environment, or IDE, for developing applications using the Java programming language and other programming languages such as C, C++, Python, Perl, Ruby, etc. Eclipse IDE is composed of plugins and is designed to be extensible using additional plugins. First is the installation of Eclipse IDE. Eclipse recently introduced Eclipse Installer, which is now available on their website https www.eclipse.org/downloads. For those who prefer not to use the installer, the packages and zip files are still available on our package download page. Before we proceed to the installation of the Eclipse IDE, first we check the system information of the laptop that we're going. As you can see, the system has a 64-bit operating system and is in under Windows 10. Next, we have also checked the installed programs. For this computer, we have Visual C++, 2008, 2010, and 2012, 2013, and 2015 to 2019, the distributable. Also installed here is for 64-bit and 32. Also, there are .NET framework installed. Its version is 4.5. Then, as we navigate to the eclipse.org/IDE, here you can see the download, which will redirect you to the download page for the Eclipse IDE. After you are redirected to their website, uh, you can see here below the installer for 32-bit and 64. Then you just click download, and as soon as the download is finished, you will see here on the lower left portion of your browser the downloaded file. So you open the file and it launches the Eclipse install by OMH. Then for this, we're going to use Eclipse IDE for Java development. On the next screen, it shows which directories you're going to install or you're going to uh, the Eclipse IDE. You can just proceed with the default configuration and press install. As I was installing this Eclipse IDE, it took me about 5 minutes for it to download all the necessary files from their server. After the installation, you just press launch or exit the installer and open the Eclipse IDE. Every time you open Eclipse IDE, it shows which workspace you like to use. And there's also an option here below that you can use this as default and do not passing. Since it was the first time that I opened the Eclipse IDE, I was immediately redirected to a great Java project. For this example, we're going to use this Java issues ID, then press next. Then it redirects you to source folders where you can create source folders with multiple folders for your project. Also, after clicking finish, you have a pop-up asking you if you like to create a module in Java. But for this example, we're not going to. Upon creating the source file, sorry, the project, we're going to create a Java class. As we right click on the source folder and go to new, click class. To test the installed, we have this example, the classic hello world. We have public class test, public static void means string args, and system out print line hello, which prints hello. As you can see, it's currently working and have output as we expect. Now we proceed the common issues that we encounter in Eclipse IDE. First is the exit code 13 and the next one is exit code 1. On the next slide, we're going to go on to the detailed explanation on why these exits occur and how we can solve. First, we're going to discuss the exit common issues for Eclipse ID. When encountering this error or was started but returned exit code 13, the first thing we need to check is whether you are using a 32 or 64-bit version of Eclipse or Java. On program files, x86 is the folder where your 64-bit Windows places the 32 programs. Then on program files is the folder where your 64-bit Windows places the 64 bits. Here is an example error of the exit code 30. If we encounter this, first, you have to check your eclipse.ini file located usually on the program files folder. Here is an example of the eclipse.ini file here on your lower left. You have to check this if it has a 30-bit or 64-bit Eclipse. As you can see on the error on the left side here, it says that Java was started but turned exit code 13, then is looking for a file in C program data Oracle Java javapath javaw.exe. But as we look on the eclipse.ini file, it shows that the VM is pointing on C program files 86 Java JDK 1.8.0 underscore 25 GRE dash B. As you can see, we have installed a 64 on a 64-bit um, program, and it points out a program files x86. It's for 32-bit programs. As I have mentioned earlier, this error occurs because your Eclipse version is 64-bit. you should download and install a 64-bit JRE and add the path in the eclipse.ini. Here's an example of a new file path for a 64-bit. Then, if your Eclipse is 32-bit, then you should install a 32-bit JRE and use the path to its java w.xf. Then from the next common issue we encounter on Eclipse IDE is the exit code 1. Exit code 1 usually appears after fixing the exit code 30. And if you ever got this exit, then the next slides will help you fix the problem. Exit code 1 occurs after a few minutes or hours using Eclipse and it just suddenly closes. This error occurs due to the JVM having low perm space. When we say perm space, it's the memory usage or the space usage on the memory. Here is an example of a exit code 1. And the solution for this is also to check your eclipse.ini file located on the program files folder. And we could add this line just before the VM. Some also include this on the end of the Eclipse ini, but we should take note that we advise that it is be placed before the VM. This line uses compressed OOBs, which limits the usage space on the memory. Then we have also other common issues, but on the configuration issues and the project structure issue. When you run a Java application and you've got this error, selection does not contain a main type, you go to the file and then on run, you go to run configuration. Then as you press the run configuration, a new window will. This is where we check if we are using the correct path for the correct project name for the Java application. Then also if we try to run this Java application and we receive an error that looks like this. Um, Error could not find or load main class com testing the test caused by Java language class found exception. Then we go to the right click the folder and go to the build path and check if all the folders are included. Then we press add folder, add folders we need, and then apply and close. As you can see, it has another icon or it changed the icon and but still there are errors on our Java. As you can see, the package name was not correctly typed and also for the public class. Here is a test run, so you see that it is already working. For the next folder, also let's change it to hello if it's here as we hover. It's a suggestion that to move it to package class tom testing. Also to rename a class a new name here and try to run it, and it shows what uh, we expect. Other issues that we commonly see on using Eclipse IDE is on the coding side. Here we have few examples of syntax error, runtime error, and logic error. Here is also an example that we can use. As you can see, it has a underline here on the syntax error, and as we run it, there's an error that it has unresolved compilation problem. String lateral is not properly closed by a double quote here highlighted, and it just miss a closing double. Then as we run this, as you can see, there is already a hello world on the console, but there is also an error that you have divided by 0. As you can see on double X, which is a runtime error, the 10 was divided to 0. Then let's just change it for this example. As you can see here, it shows the result 5 and should be 5 but is 6. It is also a common error for programmers or on the programming side is the logic error. As you can see, we should be expecting a result 5, but due to the parentheses on the operands, we have a different. But now it is what we have expected. The next will be the version control followed by the subversion or the SVN. First, what is version control? A version control system records all changes made to a file or set of files, so a specific version may be called later if needed. This also enables that multiple users working on the same project have the latest version of the file. It's an example diagram for a version control. As you can see, here is the repository or the server, and the repository is being updated by a working copy from a workstation 1, from a workstation 2, and a workstation 3. As you can see, as workstations send their commit or send their updates, it directly sends them to the repository and updates the other working copy connected to it. So in a version control, you always have the updated data, but there are also different types of version control which have different set. What are the benefits of using version control? Version control helps in managing the source code. It also keeps track of the changes in the source code. And in version control enables the user to compare different versions of the. Then for subversion, we're going to use the typical what we usually typically use for version controls, the Git. and the subversion for SVN. First, what is Git or Git software? Git software is installed on a workstation and acts as a client and a server. Every developer has a local copy of the full version history of the project on their individual machine. Git changes happen locally, so the developer doesn't have to be connected all the time. Once all the files are downloaded to the developer's workstation, local operations are faster. Next is the SVN or subversion. SVN has a separate server and client. Only the files a developer is working on are kept on the local machine, and the developer must be online, working with the server. Users check out files and commit changes back to the server. Shown here is the diagram for a Git repository and for an SVN repository. As mentioned earlier, Git repository creates its own repository per developer. So the developer has a local copy of the full Git repository. While for SVN, they are all connected on the repository and all changes are sent on the server. What are the pros and cons for these different types of repository? A Git repository is an example of a distributed version control system. What are the pros? For a distributed version control system, it is always available even during downtime since a local copy of a server is made. As if you can remember on the diagram shown earlier, um, Git repo or distributed version control systems always keeps a copy of the entire repository on the local machine. And another pros of using the distributed version control system is that in case of a server data corruption, another is always available. Since, as mentioned earlier, that a full local copy is made on the developer. Then, what is its con? Since you are creating a full or since you are creating a full copy of the repository, then it consumes a large storage. And also, if your developers are not executing the updates continually or you have a sudden update from different developers, then it could affect or it could cause an error or and conflict in your codes. Then for an SVN repository or also a type of a centralized version control system, its pros is it reduces errors and conflicts in project development since all the updates are directly passed on to the server and updates were given to the connected developers. Another pro is it provides insight to a certain extent on what everyone is doing. Since every time a developer commits, the other developers connected to it also sees the update that they are making. So you this go this reduces the errors and conflicts in coding. But for its con is the availability is dependent on connectivity since you should be always connected to the server and backup should be regularly made in case of server data corruption. Since the only full copy is on the server, you have to maintain a specific or you have to maintain a regular backup on your system so you have something to use in case of data loss. And another con for it is downtime affect all users. Since you don't have a local repository of your system, when your system goes down, then you cannot access anything or you don't have the folders or the files that you keep. For this example, we're going to use the uh, Subversion, which is an extension from Eclipse IDE. So first, we go to Help and then go to Eclipse Marketplace. Once you open the Eclipse Marketplace, it will open a new window, and on the search panel, you have to find Sub Eclipse. Then install, or you can also use eget for Git repositories, but for this example, we're going to use the Sub Eclipse or SVN. Then next is the default features. For this, we just check all, and then the review of licenses if you accept the terms of the license. Then after confirming the agreement and the packages you want to install, you will see on the bottom of your Eclipse IDE that software is installing, and there's also a progress bar that it is continually downloading from the servers of Eclipse. Then once completed, you will see an icon on the upper right corner, which is the open perspective. And on this selection, you have to select the SVN repository explorer, then press open. As we add the SVN repository, then your workspace would look like something like this. You have the SVN repository and then the files you are opening. And if you want to go back to your local file system, you could just click here and it will give you the default view space or default workspace. Then if you click back on SVN, it show you the SVN repository. Here it is pointing on or it's pointing on an icon with the SVN ad where you configure your SVN server. As you click on the add SVN, it would ask for the URL of your SVN server. Then as you add the URL for the SVN repository, I have this example which I have screen. It shows that his SVN repository is https punch.cs.sfu.ca /svn /cmpt276 bfraser. So as you can see, there are different folders on this repository, and you can see that the settings, the asset bin, usual. And you have the SBN demo here, which he used, where there is a Java class. Here, you can see that also there are numbers on the next to the folder. The numbers indicate the version number or version updates. Git and SVN common issues. Out of memory errors. One of the most common issues when using Eclipse is the out of memory error. VM can be told to let the heap grow to a larger amount, passing VMR scope the Eclipse line. As mentioned earlier, you may put extra options in Eclipse.unify. For this, we have set the memory to a 2048 by this code, XMX 2048. Another example or another issue, Git and SVN for the proxy settings. Another common issue is when servers files need proxy configuration. Then you will just have to go on Eclipse on Windows, Window, sorry, Preferences, then General, then Network. Here's an example. So you go to the Window Preferences, a new tab, then under General, you Network connections. Then you can see here configurations for it, or you can set here is the proxy bypass. Then you just add your proxy host, then select apply and close. Another issue for proxy setting is when you are running behind a proxy and wants to run subversion. Then you just go app data folder, then under subversion and servers. Once you type in the app data, then subversion and servers. Servers is a file, so you can open it and by a notepad file or notepad. You just right click and open with a notepad or uh, text you want to use. Then under the global, you can see here proxy uh, configurations that like this or that your where you are connected is using, so you can bypass it. You set the proxy host here, port, username, the password. Then you could also use the no timeout. But for this, we're just using the build function. Then there you have it. I have shown six the installations for Eclipse and also additional plugins. Like for this, we have used the SV and what are the common issues we encounter and using Eclipse and SVN. Hope you learned something from this presentation and I thank you all and stay safe. Thank you.